Here we go again. See, let's see if this time.
Okay. Yep.
No, we're okay. All right, so let me just go back to Zoom here. And good evening. Thank you for joining us. My name is Tomás Ávila, and this is the seventh of a series of Zoom meetings that I have entitled, sorry, Latino Leadership 2020, Honoring Our Past, Transforming Our Present, and Leading Our Future. And it is in commemoration or celebration, let's say, of the success that Latinos have had during the decades of 2000 to 2020. And that period of time, Latinos have elected 24 individuals to different offices across the state and across different communities. And during that period, there was a book that was published, Latinos in New England. And I had the good fortune of reading it as soon as it was published. And there is a chapter in that book, chapter 5, that is titled Growing into Power in Rhode Island. And what it details is the success that Latinos have had in Rhode Island, elected officials, but at the same time gaining the attention of elected officials and at all levels and getting services to their community based on that power. So it caught my attention, like I say, and I kept that book. So that's my Bible. And I say it's my Bible because it's my
Mm.
my documentation, my research of third party. It was put out by the Gaston Institute in UMass Boston, and it captures the whole history of what we did here, how we did it, and most importantly, it documents that what we accomplished here between 2000 and 2020, but in particular in 2000, starting in 2000, had not been accomplished in any other place across New England. So Little Rhode Island, with the smallest Latino community across New England, succeeded in electing officials, but most importantly, establishing a chain of electing individuals to different offices that keeps growing and keeps expanding. So that's the reason I'm doing this. And so I've been meeting and having conversations with leaders at all levels, individuals who I work hand in hand back 20 years ago and even more, and individuals who, needless to say, I knew to to this whole thing. And tonight, in that process of leadership, I decided to have a conversation about the Latina Leadership Institute, LLI, as is known. And why LLI? Why am I having a conversation about the Latina Leadership Institute? This is one of the platforms that we established back 20 years ago. And in particular, it was established to help Latinas get into the candidacy side of things. And why do I say the candidacy part of things? Because Latinas have always been in politics. Latinas have always been active in campaigns, but they have been behind the scene. Latinas in most campaigns that I have worked, and last week it was mentioned by the three individuals, Latinas like to work behind the scene. And so we figure a group of us, led by my good friend Melba de Peña, decided that it was time to bring Latinas to the front. And not only to the front of campaigns, but for Latinas to start running. So that's the reason this institute was formed. And tonight, I have the pleasure of having one of the co-directors of the Latino Leadership Institute, my good friend Melinda Lopez. Welcome, Melinda.
Thank you so much, Tomas. I'm very excited to be here tonight. I'm sorry that the other co-director couldn't be here. She had to take a final for her class, which those can't be changed. So I'm happy to be here tonight to talk with you.
Great. And we are going to talk. The way I'm framing it is we're going to have three sets of conversation. We're going to start with the Latina Leadership Institute, talking about, a little historical account.
Mhm.
After that, we're going to talk about, a historical account and about yourself,
Okay.
because you were appointed, I think, last year.
Yep, last
And
October.
then that's October.
Yes.
Okay. And then at the end, we're going to talk about as a validation of the institute, and it is your campaign. So that's very much the approach that we're going to take. So why don't we start by you telling us about yourself?
Sure. My name is Melinda Lopez. I grew up in New York City. I came to Rhode Island to go to Brown University in 1990. And when I came to Rhode Island, I fell in love with it right away. I loved the size, I loved the diversity, I loved the community feeling I got everywhere I went, and chose to stay here after I graduated. I have been an educator my entire career, early childhood, elementary, and college education. Um, I'm a mom of two boys. My youngest son was born with a very serious heart defect that really educated me a lot about healthcare and issues around healthcare that I never really had to deal with before. Um, I feel very strongly that the more people are educated and sort of exposed to different thoughts, different experiences, the better they can be for themselves, for their communities. And certainly that's true for Latinas. Um, Regardless of where you live in Rhode Island, I think that's very important. We can't advocate for ourselves or our community if we don't have all the information. So, being here tonight and getting to talk to you, who knows so much about Latino history, but also about LLI. I'm really looking forward to this time together.
Looking forward to it. And once again, thank you. Thank you for accepting, and thank you for being here. And also thank you for your support, because you're an amazing supporter. You share everything
Thank
that I
you.
post regarding this series, and I greatly appreciate it. So
You're
I was in planning for this, I realized that the Latina Leadership Institute was founded in 2002. And for up until 2014, I think, about around that period, it took a new direction. And that new direction was, I'm going to quote the former president
Mhm.
of the Roger Williams University, rest in peace. The way he described it was, it has gone from virtuality to reality.
Mm.
And it was that prior to that, Latina Institute was in different places, different institutions
Mhm.
across this city, across the state. And then it became housed at the Roger Williams University. Can you tell us a little history of the history and about the place where it stays now, Roger Williams University?
I actually got my teaching certificate at Roger Williams University, so it's really a 360 to come back through
Wow.
LMI. What I was told from the previous director, Norelis Consuegra, who did a fantastic job leading LLI for so many years, and Marcela from the Latino Policy Institute, is that they really wanted to house LLI in a central place, in a place that gave it more sort of stance in the community and consistency for its members. So they were able to come to an agreement with Roger Williams University so that the classes could be held there. And I believe that LLI students get support if they wanted to continue their education at Roger Williams University as well, which is a wonderful asset for anybody considering pursuing their higher education. So we've been very thankful for the past few years to be able to use that space and the resources that are provided there in a way that is one less thing that we have to worry about when we're talking about programming and making LLI more accessible to more women in Rhode Island.
And that definitely makes a huge difference because being centralized is it makes it easy for everyone. It makes it easy for you. It makes it easy for the university, but most importantly, make it easier for the participants
Mm-hmm.
because every time once a session starts, they know where to go and they know they just have to worry about the time and getting there. So that
Yeah.
definitely makes a difference. Uh, and you mentioned Norelis Consuegra, and thank you for mentioning her. And I definitely want to thank Norelis for the great service that she did with the Institute. And it was, she was there, I think, for 6 years. But it's amazing because during those 6 years, she rallied a team around her
Exactly.
that executed no matter where they went, no matter where it was. I've been fortunate that I've been involved with the Institute since it started, and Norelis did a great job in keeping me involved, even if I didn't want to. No, but she
She's
always reached out.
persuasive. She's persuasive.
Right. And she did a great job. So thank you, Norelis, and the whole support system also that has worked throughout the years with the Institute. So now it is at Roger Williams University, and very much is needless to say, COVID has changed everything.
Mhm.
But now there is a future. What
Yes.
is in that future for the
Sure.
Institute?
So originally, before COVID, we were going to have a huge spring fundraiser, and Michelle and I, the co-director, we were planning a curriculum. So when you look at LLI's history, different classes of students had some similarities in what they were exposed to in terms of development and education, but some differences. So we really wanted to look at what each class had been exposed to. We sent out a survey asking for people to share highlights across all the years so that we can make sure that we kept the experiences that most participants found valuable. Also asking participants to share something they wish they had gotten in LLI that maybe they didn't. So using all of that information, our plan was to develop a cohesive curriculum and recruit for a new class in the fall of 2020. That was the original plan. Because of COVID, so I feel like at first there was a lot of paralysis, a lot of sort of fear, myself included, for my family, for myself, for my friends, for my job, right? Everybody was really sort of learning about this pandemic. So everything was just put on hold. But recently, Michelle and I have started to have conversations about all the information we gathered, how to establish a curriculum, ask participants like yourself who came and did sessions for the participants, and then start recruitment. So we haven't really decided if that recruitment will be for the fall or if we're going to wait till January. We're kind of optimistic that we would be able to recruit for maybe October, November, and have a class that goes into 2021 with sort of this cohesive lens so that the best of LLI's history gets carried forward, but also with some changes and maybe filling in some gaps that participants felt as we move forward. So that's sort of where we are right now in streamlining a curriculum, reaching out to professionals, past participants, people in the communities of Rhode Island to come and deliver that content, to come and engage our participants, and then recruit. So letting other Latina women know what Latina Leadership Institute is, why it's something they should apply for, what they could get out of it. And then, of course, we have to make the decision whether that class will be virtual or in person. And those are hard decisions to make, right? Because it's July. We don't know what it's going to be like in October. We're hopeful, but this virus has shown us that it's in control. We are not. So those are conversations that we're still having.
And definitely that we don't know what's going to happen. Everything is temporary, or until COVID decide what it's going to do. you know.
Right, right,
But I'm
right.
glad to hear that that you did the survey, and
Mhm.
with the former participants because definitely they are the best source. They are the recipients,
Mm-hmm.
and they are the best source to actually give an opinion, pro or
Mm-hmm.
against.
Mm-hmm.
But most important, at the same time, like you say, where those the gaps needed to be filled.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy to hear that.
Mm-hmm. And we
So
also asked,
last week,
oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, we
No, you
also
go ahead.
asked like what they were doing now. So some of the women who did LLI in 2013 are now business owners. So even though it's not political, it is political that there's more minority women business owners. And so thinking about the different sort of pathways that Latina leadership can look like, regardless of whether someone chooses to run for office or not, all of those empowerment experiences are political in a state like Rhode Island. So gathering that also to see what kind of professions women have gone on into, what sort of streams of community work they're doing, so that we can also have them come back and speak to future participants. That was also very powerful information that we got from that survey.
Great. Well, I tell you my opinion about politics. I say life is politics.
Yes, I
It's
like that.
everything is politics.
Mhm. Yeah.
Whether we like it or not, or whether we call
Yes.
it differently, but
Yes.
everything is politics.
Yes, and it's
But
always interesting to me when people say like I don't like to get involved in politics. And I think like everything is political. You're right. The decisions that are
yeah,
being made around us, the decisions that we're making for our families, who we associate with, what news we watch, what resources we read about, who we follow on Twitter, everything is political.
it's, I heard former Councilman Luis Aponte
Hmm.
describe it back in 1998. We were having a conference, and it says, I hear people say that they don't like politics and they don't like this. And so I usually ask them this question. I says, what do you do? What's the first thing you do when you wake up? Oh, I wake up, I brush my teeth, I get, then I make my coffee, and and so they go through the process of telling him
Hmm.
what they do. And he
Hmm.
says, now, do you think that politics is involved in everything that you do? Uh, well, you took a bath, right? Water is regulated.
Hmm.
Water is taxed. The coffee that you buy
Hmm.
is taxed, and on and on. He
Hmm.
said, my friend, everything involves politics. And when you see it from that perspective, it's like, but definitely, and like I said, my opinion has always been that everything is politics.
Hmm. I like that. Life is politics. I'm going to
Yeah,
start that hashtag, Tomás.
thank you. But you described where I was going to go, and thank you for the diversity of careers that individuals get from this group. You know, of course, the candidates or the ones who go into politics, I think get the biggest bang. But it's amazing because I'll share with you an experience that I had back in 2000 and I think it was 2006. No. I'm sorry. It was more recent. It was around 2012. I went to a conference in Springfield, Massachusetts,
Hmm.
with a friend, and so we were at the conference and everything else. Then around 2 o'clock, we got hungry and we decided to go to a restaurant. Now nobody knows me in Springfield.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely no one. So we are there, and the place is packed. Around 3:30, we're getting ready to leave. And this young lady comes running and says, Mr. Avila, Mr. Avila, and how are you? Nice to see you. And I'm like,
Oh.
excuse me, where do you know me from? She
Hmm.
says, I went through leadership,
Latina leadership.
Latina leadership, and you were one of the
Wow.
presenters, and I always remember
Wow.
you.
That's incredible. That's incredible. That's two
So
and a half hours away.
exactly. But and I say that based on again, and so I say, so what are you doing? Needless to say, she had a job there, so she moved there. But it's the variety, the diversity of careers that individuals pursue, and at the same time, the value that these individuals add to the state of Rhode Island. So it is
Mhm.
very interesting. So the
And I think what you were saying about, sorry, what you were saying about
go ahead.
leadership and everything is political. I feel like what I noticed in my experience when I did LLI as a participant is there were women in roles in all different parts of the economy, professions, and they felt muted. They felt like they couldn't take up space and they couldn't be the person who brought up a concern, or they couldn't sort of be loud. And LLI for those people made them realize that I might not want to run for office right now. I don't necessarily want to be in a traditional political role, but in my own space where I go to work every day, I can be an advocate. I can be a listener. I can push the people in charge to think more about how their decisions influence employees, or even I can apply for a different job. So we know that women tend to not apply for a job if they don't hit every single thing in the posting, whereas men are more likely to apply anyway. So just even that idea that you can feel more empowered and elevate yourself, and that's an important thing, important skill that many of us aren't taught. So Latina Leadership Institute did a lot for a lot of sort of quiet voices that needed to feel empowered and stronger and bigger and take up more space in my class. So I'm very, very thankful for the experience on so many levels.
I always remember our good friend, Council President Maria Rivera.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when we had a conversation when I was presenting, and she was saying, "Oh, I'm quiet, I'm shy, I'm this."
Yes,
And I said, "Well,
I don't like to talk in front of people."
and what I always say, I said, "Well, this leadership program is going to change all of that." Mm-hmm. And she's like, "You think so?" Mm-hmm. Say, "I know so." And look at her when she's
right. You were very right there.
So, and that's interesting because again, so last week I had three council presidents from across the state, and two of them are graduates of Latina Leadership Institute. So not necessarily validation, but it's a testament to the program. And these are individuals who initially had no intentions to run. So now, with that, how did you get interested to become a participant of leadership at Latina Leadership?
A friend, a white man. So going back to what you were saying before about how Latina women are usually in the background, and sometimes white men are the ones to either encourage them or keep them where they want them kept. I had a white man who's a friend, who's an educator, told me about LLI. I had never heard of it. And so I applied right away, eagerly, even though I wasn't 100% sure what it was. And I didn't have all this history that you are so aware of. And was so thankful when I was chosen. And again, didn't really know what I was walking into that first day. But it turned out to be a life-changing experience.
Wow. So you didn't even know, you didn't have all the details, but you just listen and apply. Wow.
Yep.
And look at you now.
Well, that's what happens, right? I mean, I think if you give women, specifically Latina women, a venue to learn, ask questions, take risks, magic happens. And I never thought I would be running for office. I never thought I would be the co-director of Latina Leadership Institute, taking it into the future. But really all I needed was encouragement and information.
Exactly. And what I say is that what a Latina Leadership Institute gives is a platform for individuals to step into that platform, get the necessary training, get the necessary, all the tools that they need, and then jump from that platform to whatever they want to do and whatever they want to do. But at the same time, I always say you are an educator, and I always say that one of the jobs of education is to open our minds and change our minds. And that's what the Latina Leadership Institute does very well. So that platform has become very successful at setting Latinas in a pathway, but at the same time, as we mentioned earlier, the diversity of careers and the contributions that they are doing across the state, and I would say nationally, because there's so many, and which is my next question about how many Latinas have gone through the Institute.
Oh, Tomás, I don't know if I know the answer to that question. I think I would say 300,
Yes, I would say
right?
that too. Yes.
I'm thinking back to everything I've read.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, no,
And
that is the correct number. It's about 300 Latinas have gone by. So if we take a multiple of those 300 Latinas, as families and everything else, again, that platform, it goes way beyond, the period that they spend, and at the same time, the certificate that they get. So,
definitely.
so now you're a candidate,
I
and
am. I am a
how did
candidate.
how did that come about, and how did the Latina Institute help make that decision?
So, Latina Leadership Institute was the first time I thought about running for office. As I went to each class and learned more about the history of Rhode Island, and both, politically, in terms of identity, in terms of intersectional identity, in terms of economics, political history, the more that I learned about the history of Rhode Island and the history of Latinos in Rhode Island and Latinas in Rhode Island, the more I felt that this was my calling, that just because I didn't grow up in Rhode Island, and just because I was a Latina in a predominantly white community, didn't mean that I couldn't improve that community and make change in a way that is responsive to what that community needs. It really taught me what my skills were that could be transferred to politics. I felt very confident in my work as an educator, in my work as somebody who does professional development with teachers, as someone who's an adjunct instructor to adults. I felt very confident in that work, but really thinking about how those strengths could impact a community that is in need of more responsive representation came out of the sort of exposure that I got during LLI, and breaking down this idea that politics was for other people, or that politics was for only rich white people, or that politics was only for rich white men. It was a journey. It was not a simple thing. And I felt like, people tell me all the time now that I'm so brave. You're so brave to be running. You're so brave to be running in Johnston. And I feel as though sometimes I think that's true, but for the most part, I think, like, why not me, right? Why not me? I'm collaborative. I'm a good communicator. I listen. I have difficult conversations with people. I can work a room. I can be a listener and use all of that to then help decide meaningful legislation, both for Johnston and for Rhode Island. Why not me? So deciding to run was scary. But now that I'm sort of 9 months into it, it's just what I'm doing every day. And there are days that are hard, definitely. But I'm 100% committed to doing the work, even when it's hard. And so that starts now with campaigning, and campaigning during COVID is even a little bit of a challenge as well.
It definitely is.
Yes.
And so I'm listening to you, and that saying this comes to mind, that you are the change that you want in a community. And sometimes we are looking for somebody else to create that change. But, and I'm glad that you took that challenge to that, like you said, why not me? Because if not you, I can guarantee you that it's not going to be somebody who look like you, and somebody who,
right,
you know,
right.
which
And
is, Go ahead.
I was going to say, and I think, I think for people who live in Johnston, they have to understand that someone like me can represent them, that my background and my strengths and my ability to listen and learn and then lead also benefits them. It doesn't just have to benefit people who look like me, because Johnston isn't people who look like me. But, you know, hearing people's comments that are sort of subtle about, well, you're not Italian, how are you running in Johnston? You're not Italian, you're never going to win in Johnston. And then they chuckle and they laugh. But the only way that's going to change is if I run. The only way that's going to change is if they get to know me. The only way that's going to change if they realize that we have more in common than not. And that doesn't happen if you don't talk to people and communicate with people. And so this campaign has really been, as soon as we were able to door knock, we started door knocking. And it was hard at the beginning because we didn't know what people's reactions were going to be because of COVID. For the most part, people are very friendly that somebody's knocking on their door. I think there was a point where they were just happy to see another human being. Right. But we wear our masks and we ring the doorbell and we stand far back. And those conversations are happening in a socially distanced way. But they're happening in a way that they realize that we have more in common than what the statistics about who I am and what I look like and where I'm from tell them. So if they take the time to listen to me and I take the time to listen to them, there's much more commonality than anything. So, there's 49 days, I think, left till the primary. And we're just working hard every day.
And you remind me, I was thinking it was about a month ago, one of my guests was former Mayor Angel Taveras.
Uh-huh.
And one of the advice that he gave was that the only way you can win an election is by running. You cannot.
All right. I like that, Angel.
And he said, you cannot win an election by thinking that you want to run or by hesitating. Like the only way to win an election is by running. And that's what you have done. And, I want to address what you mentioned and what I call is the political entitlement. And you mentioned white men, and it is that attitude that everything that you mentioned, because you don't look like me, because you don't belong here, because you have, who are you? Where do you come from? Nobody knows you, and all of those things.
Who do you think you are? That's what I was told. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are?
Hey, I'm Melissa Lopez, and I'm running. Right?
Yes,
That's what they need to know.
Yes.
But it's amazing, and what amazed me that it hasn't changed. So when I got involved here in Rhode Island in politics, I used to hear the same thing. The other thing that I used to hear was, oh, you got to, this candidate has to wait their turn, and you haven't paid your dues. And my question to all of that was, according to who? Right. Because this is the way things have been. And my response was, well, this is the way things are not going to be any longer. And we just started challenging candidates, and and we lost a few campaigns, but eventually we started winning. And what I found interesting was that even as we lost the first few campaigns, we started gaining respect, and not only started gaining respect, but then the same individuals who said you got to wait your turn. Then it turned out to be, so who are you running next? And I'm like, okay. So now they understand that, you know what, that entitlement is because that's the way they had things. Right. And like they said, everything else is history. And it's the same thing with you, because I remember somebody else who ran in Johnston, and they confronted the same thing. And here you are a few years after, but I'm quite sure that after this election, with your persistence and your campaigner, because you're a very dynamic campaigner. I watch you through Facebook and everything that you post. That you already started to change some minds, and at the same time, letting some individuals know that you belong there. And as you say, you decided to run because if not you, who? So
Right.
I congratulate you on that.
Thank you. Thank you. And I do think so. Many people say to me, oh, thank goodness somebody is running. So our incumbent is not a white man, it's a white woman. And she's held the seat since 2007, I believe. Um, so a lot of people say, like, oh, great, somebody else is running. And they're looking at it as like, what do we have in common, as opposed to, wait a minute, you don't look like me.
Mm.
And I think this idea that the seat or the role or the elected position belongs to someone is a farce. It's just not true. It's yours until the next reelection cycle, and anybody can run. um, and even if you've done a good job, somebody might challenge you. That's part of the experience of politics. It's not personal. It's about, our community doesn't look the same or act the same or need the same things that it did in 2007. And when someone hasn't had a challenger, a strong challenger in years, people get comfortable. And there goes back to that entitlement.
Entitlement.
And people around the politician, the incumbent, are comfortable too, right? Because they know what to expect. They know how she or he is going to run, or or vote, or what priorities they have. And so to see a new person, right, you're just like, wait a minute, what does she believe? What does she think? What does she value? And all I ask is that you give me a chance, and that you learn to know about me. um, we may not agree on everything, but my position is that I will be responsive to what my constituents feel, believe, think, um, in a way that their needs get elevated at the state house. And our district doesn't get a lot of attention at the state house. The job is not to go there and place your vote and then go home. That's not the job. The job is to really be in touch with what the community is eager for, requiring, interested in, and to sponsor legislation that meets the needs of this district. While at the same time, obviously, voting on other bills that other legislative members sponsor, that impact all of Rhode Island. But I feel like anyone who has a conversation with me, I can gain their respect. But if you don't even think I deserve an email reply or a phone call response or an acknowledgement that I'm here and I'm in this race and I'm not going anywhere, to me that's ugly. Like that's not the kind of person I am, and that's not what I expect from politicians. And so it's been very eye-opening to get a glimpse of that sense of entitlement that seems to exist in many incumbents, in many positions. And I hope when I'm elected that I will start to change that perspective, because that isn't the job of the politician. It's not just to win re-election. It's to do the work even when it's hard. It's to do the work in between. My son is coming to say goodnight. Hold on one second. Good night. I love you. Quick, 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 quick. Mwah. Adios.
Oh, that's sweet.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Um, so, being a representative means that you have a real good sense of what the majority of your community is needing, what would benefit the community. And you don't get that if you're just around the same 20 or 30 people. That's not the job, right? Like, you're not there to represent this core group of people that you've known forever and who help you stay in your position. That's not the job. Our district is big, 10, 13, 12, 13,000 people. Um, get a sense of who lives here now, what they're needing, what they like about Johnston, what gaps they think we have. Try to notice themes, trends, be in touch with local politicians, with local school leaders, with local business owners, with individuals, with the elderly. There's so many pockets of communities that deserve advocacy, not just the ones that you're comfortable with and not just the ones that you've known your whole life.
It's as I'm listening to you, I follow New York politics very closely.
Uh-huh.
And one of the trends that I'm seeing there is the demise of the long-term elected officials.
Mhm.
And which started with Ocasio. But now, just this year, three others have fallen, and I think the average time that they have served is like 26 years. And I bring that to us because as I'm listening to you, what the way they have been defeated is because they got complacent and they didn't realize that the neighborhoods have changed. So these individuals now come with different strategies and, door knocking, and so they are winning and they are being elected in districts that nobody thought that a Latino or an African American person could win. So again, it's to what you mentioned, that complacency. That's not. And I'm going to add another one to everything that you say: being a rubber stamp for somebody else, not necessarily your constituency.
Correct.
Because
Correct.
that's the other reality.
Totally. And some voters have said that to me at the doors. They've said that to me. They're aware of what the reality is right now for District 43, and they're eager to hear, oh wait, somebody else is running. And that makes people uncomfortable, right? Some of them are uncomfortable. And if I make you uncomfortable, so be it. I am a thoughtful, kind, loving, intelligent woman who has had difficulty in her life and has overcome it. And as a state representative, my hope is that I can advocate where people are being silenced, and that I can bring good to our community in a way that is impactful, not just sort of sporadic. And I think anybody who gets to know me is going to know that about me. Even if you've never heard my name or you think I don't look like everybody else in Johnston, that's okay. That's okay, because that doesn't mean that we can't agree on a myriad of topics that benefit all of us in this community.
Exactly. And it comes down to, again, residency. Wherever we reside, uh, we're not there first of all, we're not there because of entitlement. We are there because, like in your case, you decided that that's where you want to raise your family, that's where you want to make your home, and that's where you want to contribute. And you've been contributing in Johnston for many years. So again, when people usually say, oh, he or she is not qualified to run for office. And my question is, what's the qualification to run for office? Oh, this, and that. I said, no, there is no qualification. There is the only qualification is the desire to seek that office and to actually do the work. And eventually you'll get elected. But so I say that because, to validate with your decision, you being a taxpayer, you being a contributor, and what you're doing is trying to elevate the decision making to, like you say, and bring resources and change the path. After COVID, everything is going to be different.
Right.
But if you have had a mentality since 2007 and you haven't done anything about it, how can you make adjustments? So again, and I'll add to every other qualification that you said, you are a Latina Leadership Institute graduate.
Yes.
So
thank you.
So you're well prepared.
And I think the other thing is, I think it's important, regardless of what role you have, to be reflective, right? Like, everybody can always get better. And if you don't think you have anything to learn, you shouldn't be in any position of leadership, because that's not true, right? We can always learn. We can always push our thinking and change our perspective if something warrants it. But if we stay closed-minded and we're not reflective people, we really start to believe that the way we did it in 2007 is the way we should do it now. And we start to believe that we don't need to hear from any differing opinions because we know what's best. And that's not really based on anything except what people are comfortable with. And being comfortable hasn't improved Johnston. Being comfortable hasn't improved our school system, or brought us more affordable housing, or helped with our roads or our climate. Being comfortable hasn't gotten us that. It's just that becomes a personal thing, right? As the incumbent, you're comfortable, your people are comfortable. That's not what the job is. It just isn't. um so, palante, one day at a time. It's really, sometimes it's very lonely, even in the age of social media. And even with, I know that I have people cheering me from behind, and everybody is managing this crisis in ways that, who am I to judge? I have good days and bad days like everybody else. There are days that I feel like everything's going to be okay, and there are days that I think nothing is ever going to be the way it was. I have a son who's immune compromised, and I worry every day about him. I have a partner who's immune compromised, and I worry about him. Um, but the reality is that, time keeps passing by, and our community has needs that aren't getting met. And I hope to be an advocate to help get more of those met, in a way that is responsive to the community of Johnston now in 2020 and moving forward.
And as you say that, I have been thinking since you started running and everything else, say, oh my, this woman has so many other responsibilities. But
Mm.
but it also reminds me of a saying out there
Mhm.
that if you have a bit whatever is busy and whatever is multitasking, give it to a woman,
Yes.
and she
I've
will
also
resolve
heard,
it.
if you want something done, ask a busy person because they're good at managing their time. Um, you know, I
It's
have I have some privileges. I am fortunate to live in a loving, happy home. I am fortunate to have a supporting partner and wonderful children that make it very easy to parent. And so my home life is very stable. And that makes anything I do on top of that easier for me because I don't have to worry about those basic things. I'm very fortunate in that. And even though I certainly worry about my youngest son, I worry about my oldest son who wants to return to college, who's going to be a college senior. I worry about the world that we're passing on to his generation. But really, at the core, my life is very stable and healthy and happy. And so it allows me to push myself, whether professionally or politically, and to do this work of campaigning in a time that um, other people have stress that they're not able to manage. So, with that place of privilege, that even made me more eager to campaign. So I did a food drive. I did a food drive twice in Johnston when COVID first happened because it wasn't one of the places where those things were existing or easily accessible to families. And so those food drives were super successful. I had people from Johnston, not from Johnston, donate, and we were able to support the food pantry at two local schools who had families calling, who needed support, whose unemployment hadn't come in. And so, I don't need to worry about being food insecure. I'm very fortunate in that. So I use my position to help families like that. And I think that is the job. Everything isn't about me and my family. It's also about the people in the community who don't know where to go, who don't have access to the same resources, who even just don't have the voice to ask for help, whether that help is informational or whether that help is money or food. As a state representative, I hope that I can be a vehicle to help them with the most basic needs and the things that we love about Johnston.
So yeah, but you cannot be empathetic about someone else if again. So you say you have all the comfort but you want to share that with everyone else. A lot of people don't think that way, and entitlement tends to do that. It tends to
Mhm.
do that. Oh, I'm okay, so the rest of the world is okay.
Mhm.
Where in
Yeah.
your case,
Mhm.
it's totally different.
No, and one of the things I want to add to that in Johnston, we don't see poverty and we don't see food insecurity in the way that it's more obvious in other communities. So I had friends who I love and admire say to me, wait, there's a food pantry? There's a food pantry at the high school? There's a food pantry at the school? Like they didn't even know that that existed. They hadn't even thought that there were families that would need that. and it's very invisible in Johnston. And so if we can't expect those families to be crying out for help all the time, it's our job as leaders to make that known, because plenty of people wanted to help. People felt so powerless at the beginning of COVID. Plenty of people wanted to help. They wanted to do something. They didn't know what they could do. It was very easy for me to publicize this food drive and to get all these donations in and gift cards for fresh produce and be able to support families that no one sees. They're invisible to us. And that's not okay, because they are taxpayers in our community too.
Yes.
So, you know, I'm very proud of that work that we did at the beginning of COVID and in the middle. So we did it twice, because I feel like for those weeks, we truly helped people who weren't getting what they needed on top of managing a pandemic.
Wow. Well, Melinda, time goes by fast when you're having fun. It's like amazing, how much we have covered.
Yes, yes.
But we are down to the last 7 minutes,
Mhm.
and so I want you to summarize the because you reflect everything that this conversation has been about, the Latina leadership and the product of Latina leadership. So I want you to again summarize the Latina Leadership Institute, which you already have done, but your benefit, and most importantly, tell people why they, Latinas and others, why they should be part of the Latina Institute, and again, briefly, what is in the future.
Sure. So I think Latina Leadership Institute allows for women to be heard, but also for women to be respected in a way that maybe they don't get respect at work or out in their communities. And so when we're brought together as Latinas in Rhode Island, we didn't know each other. We are really given the same information, asked the same questions, put through the same experiences in a way that highlights our diversity, because Latinas are not all the same. So it was able to highlight our diversity, but also our similarities in a way that was sort of a microcosm of what happens when we're out in our regular communities, right? Because there's diversity, but there's also similarities. So Latina Leadership Institute for years has allowed women to sort of take that breath and realize that with this new information, with this training that I've been given, with these skills that I'm being exposed to, I can be a leader. I can take up space and help impact my circle of influence, wherever that is, whether that's in the store that I work at, the bank that I work at, the housing projects where I live, the teaching, the school that I work in, regardless of what my sort of influence feels like, that as a Latina, armed with information, that I can actually impact more of my community in a way that is meaningful and is impactful. But also that it's okay to ask questions. It's okay not to know all the answers. It's okay to be in a space where you have to pause and step back. It doesn't make you less of a leader or less of a Latina or less of a Rhode Islander. And I think when I decided to apply to be the co-director, I really wanted to cultivate all of the sort of energy and passion that LLI gave me and bring that to a new generation. And this isn't something that is pizza that when you cut it, it's done. It's something like a candle, right? So the more we light it, the more it can grow. And many of us work really hard and are always in the background. And Latina Leadership Institute really shows us that we don't have to stay in the background. We can if we want to, but we're more informed, we're more educated in that background, but also that we don't need to fit a specific criteria to step up, to take leadership on, to run for political office. Sort of all bets are off. And I really believe that happens with education. And for me, Latina Leadership Institute was an educational experience that exposed me to facts, data, experiences, and other people in a way that I really left ready to take on the challenge of running for office, and in my case, running for state representative. So when I look to the future of LLI, Michelle and I are really hopeful that, again, using all that information from our surveys, from talking to former participants, that we are able to create a new program that has the best of the past and some more responsive things to what's happening now, in a way that we can encourage a new group of LLI sisters to feel empowered and to feel present in wherever they're working, in whatever their sphere of influence is at the time. I think that answered your question.
Yeah, you sure did.
Okay.
Before I say good night, I want to remind you that next week I'm going to have three dynamic young Latinas. I call them the emerging leadership of the future, and of the present and the future. We are going to have Central Falls City Councilor Jessica Vega.
Mhm.
We are going to have Leonela Felix, who is running for state rep in Pawtucket.
Yep.
And we're also going to have Jenny Segui Rodriguez, who's also running for city council in Pawtucket. And that is an interesting scenario. And the reason I decided to have this because, you know, the impact that Jessica is having in Central Falls, but at the same time, Pawtucket has like six women running.
Yes.
And they are running together, and that's what interested. And I'm eager to see the result of that because I'm hoping that these six women win because they're going to change Pawtucket. What is your opinion about it?
Definitely. So I think Stephanie Orlalte, I'm saying her name wrong.
Yes.
Yeah. So she's one of the women who are supporting that group of women in her work to create this slate that I think it's called It's Her Time. It's Her Time.
Yeah,
I think it's called.
It's her time.
Yeah, because Pawtucket, similar to Johnston, the city council doesn't represent what Pawtucket looks like anymore. And so having this group of women who are just a team and doing this together is really beautiful to see as a non-Pawtucket resident. But also I feel like, you know, that's what Pawtucket deserves. They deserve a group that is has been thoughtful and made this commitment for true systemic change in a place that is just used to the same old, same old. And we're learning that the same old doesn't work. It doesn't work in Johnston. It doesn't work in Pawtucket. So I'm really hopeful for their candidacies moving forward, and really thankful that Stephanie, who's an LLI alum, is supporting all of that work there too for those candidates.
Exactly. And I'm just going to add to it that one of the things that COVID has shown is that if you've been in any political position for whatever length of time, but in particular, if you've been there for 30 years, you are part of the inequities that COVID has highlighted and all the issues and problems highlighted by COVID.
100%.
Melinda, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tomás.
Great. I have enjoyed this conversation. I have enjoyed the exchange. I wish you the best of luck, and I hope we are going to be celebrating a victory, and most importantly, your inauguration after all of this.
Thank you so much, Tomás. I appreciate your time too. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
You
good
too.
Night, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
You're welcome.